Welcome back to the hearing that we are resuming in the application of Duke Energy Progress LLC for approval of residential service, tariffed on-bill pilot program. When we broke, the witness was still on the stand. First, though, I need to take a roll call. Commissioners and all commissioners are here in the courtroom. Commissioner Thomas is on annual leave. Witness Sloat.
Yes, here.
All right. Let me remind you, you are still under oath, and I assume you haven't discussed your testimony during the break with anyone.
That is correct.
All right. We'll resume with Commissioner questions. Commissioner Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Powers. Good afternoon, Mr. Sloat. Thank you for letting me come back and ask another question or two.
Sure.
In your discussion, and I didn't take good notes about this, you talked about the impact of a tariff on bill program and its impact in high load growth areas. Could you expand on that? Is it because of the impact on potentially being able to avoid generation? Are you able to remember that context any
Yeah,
better
I
than
think that
am?
was really just a general statement about possible benefits, and that for utilities that are experiencing growth, energy efficiency, demand side management investments can help reduce the need for growth, either fully or postpone it, depending on the level of impact from the efficiency versus the growth needs.
Thank you. And I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about what it is, the research that you've done. And you heard these questions earlier as I was talking with witness Duff. And it really is, from the programs that you've seen, is 10% typical? Is it low? Is it high? How do you think that programs like this are, settle in on that, whatever number it is that they use? And well, as long as I'm doing a string of questions and I can remind you, but how often are those numbers low? It's a minimum. So, in reality, how often do they produce more energy savings than what is being banked on?
So to your question about the 10% kind of threshold and its commonplace use, that is more often, my research has revealed that's more often that's what in place by those that use these programs. As was previously mentioned by another witness, I believe Huff, 20% is more on the higher end. So it is a range. 10% I've seen is more typical, and that's what's proposed here by DEP in North Carolina. In terms of the level of savings, certainly they may be beyond what is ensuring that threshold is achieved. So that is just ensuring that no more than 90% of the costs are covered fully as a cushion.
I understand that. So are you also saying that there's really not any kind of rule of thumb or circumstance that you've seen where programs like this have been able to generate a describable amount of savings beyond that 10%?
Yes, certainly they can, depending on the measures, they can certainly be beyond that 10%. It depends on the measures being installed. Certainly that can be the case.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Any further commissioner questions? Ms. Mixon, any redirect?
Yes, briefly. Thank you, Mr. Sloat. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Do you recall you were asked questions by Commissioner Caston about the language in the TOB statute and specifically around the term directly benefiting?
Yes.
Under the proposed program, would the costs of the measures themselves be recovered from those residences where the measures are installed?
Yes.
And do you recall that the statute says that a utility may recover the costs, including financing costs, of these measures from members or customers directly benefiting from the installation?
Yes, that's what it states.
Would you categorize administrative or marketing costs as costs of the measures installed?
No, I would not.
You were also asked about cost recovery of other utilities' TOB programs. I just want to make sure that it's clear. Are there other TOB programs you're aware of where, like the proposed program here, administrative costs are spread across both participants and non-participants?
Yes, as I stated earlier, notably 2 IOUs, the program proposed by Duke Energy Progress in North Carolina, as well as Evergy in Missouri, both have the non-measure costs or the administrative and other related costs. Those are borne by not just participants, but all customers, so participants and non-participants.
You were also asked questions from Commissioners Caston and Commissioner Carol Lee Williams about other programs and benefits from those programs. Do you have your exhibits in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Could you please turn to exhibit SAS-3, page 16? And I realize you may not have page numbers on your exhibit, but I'm going to reference table 7, which is titled Average Project Savings by Program and Fuel.
I'm there.
Thank you. Do you see that table lists average savings both in kilowatt hours and savings percentages for participants in 3 different utility programs?
Yes, that's what it indicates.
And would you agree that that range of savings was from 21 to 23%?
Yes, that's what it indicates.
And can I also ask you to turn to your direct testimony, and specifically I'm looking at page 13, lines 11 through 18, where you discuss the Ouachita Tariffed on-bill program.
Yes.
Thank you. In your summary of that Ouachita program, it provides that single-family homes participating in that program saved on average 30% compared to before those improvements were made.
Correct. That's what it states.
And for multifamily, was that average over 35%?
Yes, that's what it states.
And the buffer percentage was for the Ouachita program was 20%, whereas this program is 10%. Is that right?
Correct.
So did savings exceed the buffer in that program?
Yes, as indicated for the Ouachita program, the savings are well above the 20% threshold in that instance.
And do you also recall that 47% of that program's participants in its first quarter were renters?
Yes, that's what it indicates.
Could those renters participate in the earlier version of a loan program that Ouachita Cooperative offered?
No, they could not.
And so customers that may not have participated in EE programs or been able to make EE improvements due to the program, were they able to cut usage significantly?
Yes, in the Ouachita example, yes.
And do you recall that in your exhibit SAS-3, that exhibit also notes that customers that participate in these programs also experienced other benefits such as improved comfort, health, and safety?
Yes, I remember that.
Does reduced energy usage, generally speaking, help reduce utility load?
Yes, that's commonly what occurs.
And in general, does reducing load help prevent the need for new generation?
Yes, it does help in that regard.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Mixon. Any other recross? All right. Witness may step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
ORS,
Chair Powers, Office of Regulatory Staff calls Ms. Dawn Hipp to the stand.
come forward.
Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hipp.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Dawn Hipp.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the state of South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as the Chief Operating Officer.
Did you prepare or cause to be prepared 34 pages of direct testimony, both in confidential and redacted versions, in this docket on July 15, 2024?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I do. I have one slight edit. On page 2 of my direct testimony, line 20, the order number, which reads 2022-238, should read 2022-138.
Okay. Besides that correction, if I were to ask you the same questions as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Powers, I move that the confidential and redacted versions of Ms. Hipp's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that's subject to the correction she made on the stand.
The pre-filed confidential and redacted versions of the direct testimony of Ms. Hipp, along with changes on page 2, will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
And I ask that her confidential version of her testimony remain under seal.
The testimony shall remain confidential as long as necessary.
Okay. Ms. Hipp, did you pre-file with your direct testimony one exhibit marked as Exhibit DMH1?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to that exhibit?
No, I do not.
Chair Powers, I would ask that Exhibit DMH-1 be marked for identification and entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
The pre-filed exhibit identified as number 1 will be marked for identification and will place in the record as exhibit number 4.
Okay. And Ms. Hipp, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 18 pages of sir rebuttal testimony in this docket on August 5th, 2024?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your pre-filed sir rebuttal testimony?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions as those posed in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Powers, I ask that Ms. Hipp's pre-filed sir rebuttal testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed sir rebuttal testimony will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
With your pre-filed sir rebuttal, did you also include one exhibit marked as sir rebuttal exhibit DMH-1?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any changes to that?
No, I do not.
Okay. Chair Powers, I ask that Ms. Hipp's sir rebuttal exhibit DMH-1 be marked for identification and entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
The pre-filed sir rebuttal exhibit of witness Hipp identified as DMH-1 marked for identification and will be placed in the record as exhibit number 5.
Ms. Hipp, did you prepare a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I did.
Please present it at this time.
Certainly. Good afternoon. After extensive review and examination of Duke Energy Progress's application for approval of a residential TOB pilot, the company's testimony, responses to requests, and compliance with South Carolina Code Annotated 58-3750, ORS recommends the proposed TOB pilot be denied. The company's current proposal lacks the appropriate guardrails to ensure the company's compliance with the law, which provides that electricity provider may recover costs from customers who are directly benefiting from the installation of the EE and conservation measures. The proposed TOB pilot offered by the company is voluntary, and ORS believes only customers participating in the TOB pilot should pay for the additional costs to design, implement, administer, and market the TOB pilot. My direct testimony presented ORS's findings and recommendations regarding ORS's review and examination. ORS made 12 recommendations in direct testimony related to the proposed TOB pilot. In rebuttal testimony, the company addressed many of ORS's concerns and/or agreed to implement certain ORS recommendations related to the Energy Auditor Report, consistent language to be used in the proposed tariff, participant agreements, customer bill forms, and customer-facing materials. However, DEP determined that if the proposed TOB pilot were to incorporate all of ORS recommendations, it would not be a feasible offering without requiring non-participating customers to significantly subsidize the voluntary program in order to support TOB participants. As my surrebuttal testimony outlines, ORS and the company continue to disagree on the cost recovery framework and the treatment of maintenance and warranty services. In general, the company appears to conflate its EEDSM program requirements as outlined in 583720 and the company's approved EEDSM mechanism with the distinct requirements for financing agreements pursuant to 583750. DEP has not quantified how the proposed TOB pilot will generate energy savings or system benefits. The proposed pilot will simply provide customers with an option to finance over a 10-year period any EE or DSM upgrade. Any potential energy savings or system benefits will be quantified and measured within the company's EEDSM program portfolio, which is funded by residential customers regardless of participation. Non-participants will gain no additional benefits from the proposed TOB pilot and should not be required to subsidize the voluntary financing program. Furthermore, if approved, the company proposes to evaluate the success of the TOB pilot through an EM&V study, which will include the following performance metrics: the customer experience, the default rate, the frequency of disconnections, the frequency with which participating customers require payment plans, the participants' satisfaction with trade ally interactions, the trade ally experience, the effectiveness of notifications to subsequent occupants of the residence, and whether it provides definitive answer regarding the feasibility of implementing a similar program across South Carolina. Notably, the company's proposed performance metrics do not include customer energy savings or system benefits. Regarding the company's proposal to include maintenance and warranty service costs in the meter conservation charge, it is important to note that the company does not require residential customers enrolled in the Smart Saver EEDSM program to purchase or furnish maintenance and warranty services to receive the incentives offered by DEP. The financing market for EEDSM measures is robust, and customers can choose from a variety of vendors in the market. Customers wishing to finance EEDSM upgrades directly with a vendor or lending institution are free to do so. ORS's recommendations provide customers with the ability to choose how they meet the maintenance and warranty requirements of the proposed TOB pilot, very similar to how the customer may choose a contractor to install the EEDSM measure pursuant to 583750F. The company's proposal to embed the cost of maintenance and warranty services into the monthly meter conservation charge for 10 years is not specifically detailed in 583750B and may not allow the customer to make that choice on how to meet DEP's maintenance and warranty requirements in a manner that is most cost efficient and effective for the customer. Given the robust competition in the maintenance and warranty service arena, ORS recommended that the customer have the ability to choose to finance the maintenance and warranty services from DEP or procure those services in the market. This would allow the customer to choose the most cost-effective option in the same manner in which the customer can provide then proof of insurance to the company for the EEDSM upgrade. The law 583750D specifies that the company may recover the cost from the customer directly benefiting from the installation of the EEDSM upgrades. As confirmed in witness Duff's rebuttal testimony, the proposed TOB pilot program design requires non-participating residential customers to fund not only the EEDSM program incentives through the approved EEDSM cost recovery mechanism, but also the costs related to the voluntary financing agreement for participating residential TOB pilot customers. This significant cost shift required by the proposed TOB pilot to non-participating customers is neither reasonable nor equitable. Likewise, the companies claim that the proposed TOB pilot will provide system-wide benefits for non-participating customers lacks support and is purely speculative. The proposed TOB pilot and administration thereof is not a core function of DEP's provision of electric services, and there are no quantifiable system benefits. Therefore, a clear separation of the revenues and expenses is appropriate to ensure non-participants are held harmless from any and all resulting activities, expenses, and operations associated with the TOB pilot. In summary, ORS recommends the proposed TOB pilot be denied if, as the company asserts, the only feasible way forward is to require non-participating customers to fund costs related to administrative, marketing, third-party vendor implementation, in-home energy auditing, recruiting, enrolling, educating, and training its trade allies. Should the Commission approve the proposed TOB pilot, ORS recommends several important customer protections be adopted by this Commission. The first one is that the company should be required to record all revenues and expenses for the TOB pilot on the books and records of DEP below the line. The company should be required to hold all non-participating South Carolina customers harmless from any and all resulting activities, expenses, and operations associated with the TOB pilot. Third, the company should not be permitted to seek recovery of any direct or indirect costs associated with the TOB pilot from any non-participating customers. As such, no expenses associated with the TOB pilot should be included in non-participating customer rates. Fourth, the costs for maintenance and warranty services should be removed from the company's calculation of the meter conservation charge. Should the company require monthly payment of the maintenance and warranty services, the charges should be reflected as a separate line item clearly designated as maintenance and warranty services on the customer's bill. Fifth, participating customers should be allowed to procure their own maintenance and warranty services that are the most cost-effective for the customer and furnish proof of such to the company within 30 days of the installation of the EEDSM measure. And sixth, and in summary, the TOB pilot and its impact on participating and non-participating customers should be carefully monitored, and the company should be required to report certain items listed in my surrebuttal testimony on an annual basis. This concludes my summary.
Ms. Hipp is available for questions from the parties and the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. Any questions from the company?
No questions from the company.
Mr. Hall?
Good afternoon, Ms. Hipp. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. I think you covered my first few questions in your summary, but I just want to, just in case you wanted to add anything, wanted to just ask a couple follow-ups. So your testimony references several times that the TOB pilot is not part of the company's EEDSM portfolio. I was initially going to ask what the relevance or significance of that sounds like to me from your summary and thinking back from your testimony that it's the main importance of that statement is that the TOB is just the financing mechanism. Is there any other relevance of the fact that this is not part of the EEDSM portfolio?
You have accurately characterized it as distinct and different from the EEDSM portfolio, which falls under 583720. This has a separate statute, and it is specific to just the financing arrangement.
Okay. And you also, in your surrebuttal on page 6, starting at lines 23, I think this is something you addressed in your summary, but there you state any potential energy savings or system benefits will be quantified and measured within the company's EEDSM program portfolio funded by all residential customers regardless of participation. What are those? How does that work in the EEDSM portfolio? The funding the energy, you say energy savings or system benefits. Can you explain how customers already pay that?
Well, I am not a DSM EE expert, so I should qualify that to begin with. Under the portfolio costs, that is the administrative program management costs. There's also net lost revenue that shows up in terms of costs that need to be recovered, and then any incentives that the company may have earned given the energy savings that have been experienced by the customers. And those are the types of costs that you will see underneath the company's EEDSM portfolio.
Okay. So is it ORS's understanding then that, I guess even if participating customers covered all the measure-related and non-measure-related costs we've talked about today, that non-participating customers are still going to pay for some of these EEDSM incentives? Does that make sense?
Well, all customers will pay for the EEDSM incentives, especially if the TOB pilot customer, the customer who enters into a financing arrangement, accepts the company's shared savings incentives, EEDSM incentives. So that customer not only will receive the benefit of the incentive, but they will also pay the cost to offer that incentive under the company's EEDSM program. When you look at the TOB pilot costs, the non-participating customers are being asked to pay for the administrative marketing, third-party implementer training costs, but the participating customers are not being asked to pay that.
All right, thank you. And again, you covered this in your summary pretty well, but so essentially ORS believes that as proposed, the program should be denied, but if the commission approves the program, you offer, include a list of what you call customer protections that the commission should include. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you summarize those in your surrebuttal on page 15 to 17. Starting on page 16 of your surrebuttal, and Mr. Torrey went through these earlier with Mr. Sloat, is a number 6, A through M, that lists several reporting requirements you recommend the commission adopt. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in that list on page 17, I'm looking at letter H, would require reporting of, quote, any occurrences and complaints related to the non-payment or default of participants or disconnections for non-payment. Is that right?
That is correct.
Why is that important to ORS?
The company already reports non-voluntary disconnections of electric service. We would like, and so that is reported on an aggregate level. to both the commission and to ORS. What we would like to see are those customers who were specifically terminated for service due to non-payment of the meter conservation charge. And we think that that's just an important data point to see how successful the program, if the program is successful or if it is contributing to a higher occurrence of disconnection for customers.
Let's see, in your exhibits to your SIR rebuttal, you included redlined versions of Duke's proposed customer agreements. Is that right?
That's correct.
And those are ORS's suggested revisions. In the section related to the company's appeals process for customers, you deleted language that references a customer filing an inquiry with ORS, and which also included ORS's consumer dispute webpage. Is that right?
That's correct.
Why did you suggest deleting that?
We suggested deleting that because Section 14 relates only to the appeal of Section 13. And so customers in South Carolina, should the commission approve the TOB pilot, have the freedom to call ORS to resolve any dispute at any time. Once they've reached out to the utility, if they're dissatisfied with what the utility, with how the utility has attempted to resolve the complaint, they can call ORS for any reason. And so we didn't want it narrowly tailored just to be able to call related to that Section 13 and 14. When and if a customer who's subscribing or voluntary signed up for the TOB pilot calls ORS, we will attempt to navigate and put them in contact with the company or resolve whatever their issue is. It is important to note, though, that the customer will be signing on a participant agreement and as such beholden to the terms of the participant agreement. So there are some limits as to what ORS Consumer Services can help them with. If the company has acted in accordance with the terms of the participant agreement, then that leaves the customer to either look to the commission or some other remedy.
Okay, and so I think you've answered this question there, but just to make sure, so ORS will take customer calls and take complaints about this program?
Yes, we would.
Okay. Would ORS be willing to put similar language in a different section other than the appeals section?
Well, it is an inherent, if the commission were to want that included in the participant agreement in some area, certainly we wouldn't find that objectionable. It is inherent as a regulated program, if approved by the commission, that the customer has that right already, and that is listed on the company's bill form.
Is ORS's contact information on Duke's bills?
It is. It is. They have made some new tweaks to their bill form, and so you should see that rolling out. But yes.
Would it surprise you that I checked my Dominion bill and ORS's contact information is not on Dominion's bills?
It would not surprise me. It is not a requirement that it show up on the bill form. We have asked and have been working specifically with Duke Energy to get our customer 1-800 number prominently located on their bill.
Okay, and so again, just to make sure I understand your testimony, do you know when this is supposed to happen? But so in the near future, ORS's contact information will be on.
I don't have a specific date.
Okay. Do you think that that's important? Obviously, if that's something that ORS brought up.
I do. It does. In some cases where we see utilities electively put that on their bill, the customer will call ORS first, and the procedure is that the customer has to call the utility first to see if give the utility an opportunity to resolve the issue. Then they may call the ORS, and so sometimes it causes customer confusion, but we think it might be beneficial.
Okay, I agree. Did you know that was one of DCA's suggestions, was that ORS contact information should be somehow associated with the agreement?
Yes.
And I think lastly, again, I think you have addressed this before, but the last thing I was going to ask you about was the mandatory warranty requirements. I think you explained it pretty well, so I won't ask you about that again. Is it fair to say that ORS believes that a customer could get a warranty cheaper than that proposed by Duke?
We do. We have, whether it's cheaper or not, we sense that the customer might like to have the option to seek warranty and maintenance services on their own. Some customers may prefer to maintain control of that. Some customers may prefer to avail themselves of the one-stop shop, as Witness Duff had talked about in his testimony. We want the customer to have a choice. From our perspective, the company may lay out the terms of what the maintenance and warranty may meet, 2 times annual, I think, as Commissioner Belzer and Witness Duff talked about. Those parameters are fine if they're communicated to the customer and the customer has the option to seek the service that's most economical and easy for them.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. We now proceed to commissioner questions. Commissioner Belzer.
Commissioner Powers, sorry, I have some cross-examination. This is Kate
sorry
Nixon.
I missed you. Trying to get Ms. Hip out of here by 5.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hip. How are you?
I'm good.
Would you dispute that tariffed on-bill programs can help enable customers that otherwise couldn't or wouldn't be able to participate in EEDSM upgrades to do so?
I don't have a vast body of knowledge about tariffed on-bill programs. Specifically, this is the first one that we are seeing from an investor-owned utility. We certainly have awareness about the electric co-ops in South Carolina's success with a very similar construct under the current law, 583750. I don't have any reason to believe that some customers might find a tariffed on-bill an attractive offer to go ahead and finance their upgrades.
You're aware, though, that increased participation, particularly by renters and by low or moderate income customers, was a kind of key outcome in finding where these programs have been implemented.
If I read Mr. Sloat's exhibits correctly, I see in those cases that he cites to some positive attributes in those areas.
Thank you. And for this proposed program, the company is proposing to use the TOB pilot in conjunction with its existing EDSM offerings. Is that correct?
I understand that to be the case, but it's not mandatory that the customer take the incentives under the Smart Saver program. But yes.
Can you think of a reason why a customer would not want to take one of those incentives that could reduce the monthly charge?
I can't speak to customer behavior in that area.
Okay. Do renters currently pay for the company's EEDSM programs through the rider charge on their bill?
They do.
You're aware that renters are not able to participate in many of the company's programs currently, correct?
Based on the program design, yes.
Okay. Is ORS okay with this broad swath of the company's customers being excluded from participating in many of the company's major programs?
I think the company has examined how to incorporate renters into many of their EEDSM programs. I didn't spend a significant amount of time looking through their portfolios to see what opportunities are there, but I think that the company has been looking for ways to minimize that gap.
Okay, and you would agree that proposing this pilot program might be one of those ways that the company is seeking to close that gap?
I think the TOB pilot eligibility requirements as proposed by the company provide renters an opportunity to finance upgrades.
Okay. And just one more question. You would agree, wouldn't you, that a major purpose of a pilot program is to help gather more data and information about a program that has potential for success or potential to be expanded further later?
I think pilots are an interesting way of gathering data. So I would agree with you there, but a pilot needs to be carefully constructed and managed such that the impact to non-participating customers is minimized or eliminated, and that the learnings are valid.
Thank you, Ms. Hipp. Those are all my questions.
Thank you.
I think that covers it. Any commissioner questions? Commissioner Belser.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hipp.
Good afternoon.
I was interested in the same question that Ms. Mixon asked about gaining information from pilot programs. I think in your testimony you've mentioned quantifiable benefits more than once. And isn't that something that would hopefully come out of a pilot program?
It certainly is one of the factors that would come out of a pilot program.
You've stated that it's ORS's position that this program does not generate energy savings or system benefits, and that non-participants will gain no additional benefits, I think was some of the verbiage also used. Having this as a pilot, would that not lend to justification for those kind of statements, to see whether there are benefits that inure to the system as a whole and thus inure to non-participating customers?
I think the end result of the pilot as proposed by the company would be to see how many additional people access EEDSM. And that will be that's how they're measuring their success in the program. How that translates into actual energy savings in the EEDSM program will be measured in that program itself. And so we had asked the company some questions about the design of the pilot and the alternatives to the pilot. And it was clear that the company's answers were less than robust in that area. I think the elimination of a barrier to their EEDSM programs is really just kind of the base level of what they're looking to gauge. And I might add, the cost is significant. I think you heard earlier today.
That's in your confidential?
It is.
Okay. And that cost is not per year, that's over the 3-year.
It's over the 3-year period.
Estimate.
We were unable to validate if it was inclusive of all costs, in particular the implementer of the program. So it is likely that those costs could be higher.
And ORS is recommending that any cost, those costs of administration, implementation, not the actual product in itself, but the administration and all, that those be reported below the line. Is that correct?
The cost for the program itself be reported below the line.
And by asking that it be reported below the line, that would mean that the company would foot those costs. Is that correct?
It would mean that those costs for accounting purposes would be segmented into separate accounts that cannot be commingled with what you would see for base rate costs.
Well, and I think that's what I'm trying to understand. Is ORS recommending that those costs be segregated and accounted for, so that if they come in for a general rate case where they're asking to recover, my understanding is they're asking to recover those costs in base rates, which would be a general rate case. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay. So when I hear about below the line, to me, that's something that is not going to be recoverable in a rate case. Is ORS asking that those not, and that's what I mean when I say that those are footed by the company. Is ORS asking that they be tracked and maintained separately so that they can be considered in the rate case, or just saying that the company has to foot those costs?
What we are saying, I think it's number 3 on our list of recommendations, is that those costs are not included in non-participating customers' base rates. Whether the company has to foot the cost of those or they embed it into the meter conservation charge for those that voluntarily are interested in the financing charge, those are the options that the company has.
And when I say foot, I'm talking about bear. The company would bear those costs. And is that?
They would either wrap them into the financing charges for the customers participating in the TOB pilot, or yes, they would have to bear those costs.
And I think where I'm curious is, because it's a pilot, because we're trying to see if there might be any, what if any benefits might accrue from this program if it's approved. Is it just appropriate to track those costs so that they could be reviewed in a general rate case for possible inclusion or exclusion?
We find so let me back up for a minute. So the commission has approved an on-bill financing arrangement for Dominion Energy for their EV charging program, and I talk about that in my testimony. In the approval of that, the company agreed to record those expenses and revenues below the line and to not include them in base electric rates for non-participating customers. So you do have a pilot that is using this unique accounting treatment. You will not, in theory, see those within the confines of an electric base rate case. And we did not see them in Dominion's base rate case this go around. We have asked for that same treatment here for the TOB pilot for Duke Energy Progress. When companies segregate costs, and this company in particular, during our discovery, we asked several questions about the segmentation of costs because they do talk about it in their application. And what we found in one section of answers, the company indicated that they would be recovering administrative costs through their EEDSM portfolio and cost recovery mechanism. Well, we knew that that might not be correct, so we asked subsequent questions to elicit the information that identifies that the company intended to recover those additional costs through base rates. And given the differential in answers that we received from the company, it will be incumbent upon ORS. The burden will fall on ORS to find those costs, segment them, determine if they're sufficient. The cleaner, easier way to say that they are not in base rates and confirm that is a recording below the line. And that's why we have chosen to put that forward as a recommendation.
And I know you had the chart in your testimony comparing this proposed program with the Dominion EV charging, but is the EV charging is quite different is that trying to get toward energy savings? Because those chargers are going to be pulling from the grid, are they not?
They're two different programs. You're absolutely correct. The Dominion program is different. That was a financing of equipment to allow customers to have access to EV charging equipment and to mitigate some of those upfront cost barriers. The TOB pilot is the same. It's just to mitigate upfront cost barriers.
And I understand, but if the purpose of this pilot is to allow the mitigation of cost for these customers so that hopefully there will be energy savings, is that not some benefit that needs to be spread across others as well?
We don't see that as such.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Caston.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Trying to keep all this together, moving parts, it's a challenge. What the customer pays for, what they don't, where does it go in? you'd made a statement, I think earlier, I couldn't write that fast, but something along the line that the, the value of a pilot program depends pretty much on how it's developed and finer parts. Just because it's a pilot program doesn't mean it's good or bad. It depends on how it's developed. How did you say that? Basically, well, it was something along the lines that just because it's called a pilot program doesn't make it good or right, but it doesn't make it necessarily bad. It's only, I guess, useful if it's put together right. I've butchered that greatly.
No, I think you probably stated it better than I did. You know, innovation is difficult in a regulatory environment. We know that. And so when an electric utility desires to test a pilot of something, you know, whether it be the Dominion EV charging or the company's TOB pilot, there needs to be some sort of parameters around the pilot, you know, identifying the learnings. There's a process, not just the evaluation, which is what the company has offered you today, but they've thought through their data management. They've thought through, and they have to some extent, their customer experience. There's just needs to be some sort of parameters around that, and some of those are lacking here. The pilot is a small test group of 1,000 customers. The cost is high, as we have discussed. The company tested a pilot with the commission, the electric transportation pilot, not long ago. They released their learnings on the electric transportation pilot, and what you see are very low avoided cost benefits compared to very high costs for the program, with the majority of the costs being administrative type costs. Low, you know, so that is concerning to ORS. When we see things like that in terms of pilots, it gives us a pause as we look at the cost impact, not just to the participants, which we have done here, but also to non-participants.
And all of the cost of the pilot program are recoverable or recovered by the utility, whether it pans out or not. Is that true or false?
The way this pilot has been designed, the TOB pilot has been designed, it is all the company is asking for recovery of all of it.
And if I understood you correctly, that, and it seemed like I remember this, I can't remember if it was your director, Cerebral, too, the measures that DEP plans to measure, I think you said something along the lines, don't include energy reductions or benefits. It's just other things that aren't tangible or measurable relative to energy savings or energy benefits and such. Is that a true statement?
It is a true statement. It is not a knock on the company's success criteria evaluation. Remember, this is a financing program only. This is not EE, a DSM program. We would expect to see the company measuring things like customer experience, number of customers who've subscribed, number of disconnections, that type of thing, because the system benefits, the energy savings will be measured and tracked within the context of their EEDSM portfolio.
Okay. And I think you'd also said something along the lines, not part of their core business, you know, what they exist for. Do you see this program as such as this is mission creep, or just it's not part of the business?
It isn't part of the core business. They're in the business of generating, transmitting, distributing electricity, billing their customers for that, and collecting. This is a banking type business that the company is looking to offer their customers, albeit on a small scale, but it is non-traditional. It is not typical utility service.
Well, I certainly want to be cognizant of all, as much as I can relative to cost, what the customer's paying, where does it go, and EEDSM, separate rider, it doesn't go in the rate base. If this were approved, at least these charges that would go to all customers would be in the rate base and part of the base rate, which I think explaining that to a customer would be awful, trying to explain that, because that's confusing on any level.
It is. It's hard to explain these different programs to customers. It's also hard to explain to a customer who cannot participate in EEDSM why they have to pay $10.52 a month for that. I mean, there is a greater system benefit. You can talk through some of those things, but if the customer doesn't feel it directly, they don't see the energy savings themselves, and all they see are rates going up, they're unable to see the big picture. It's as if it does not exist. And so one of the difficulties we have in explaining the TOB pilot, because we talk about this as an organization, is how do you look at a non-participating customer and tell them you are going to pay for somebody else's financing ability. You're not able to avail yourself of that for whatever reason, or you've chosen not to, but you will pay for it.
Now, you mentioned that. I think the 1052 was based on 1,000 kilowatts. And actually, in questions from Mr. Duff, he couldn't remember it, and I wasn't sure either. It seems like I saw 1225 somewhere. It may have been in the DEP rate case as far as average energy usage. So the 1,000 kilowatts is just a round number, but the average customer energy usage is greater than that, correct?
I believe that's what I heard in the DEP rate case. Don't quote me on that. So.
I won't. She did. And I don't recall the exact numbers, I mean, for DEP as far as the total annual cost for these programs. I kind of know it's, I don't know. It seems like with DEP it was like 50 million plus annually, and DEC I think was 70 million plus something. I think that was in your Director Surrebuttal. Was that correct? Or
I don't know that I had that in my testimony. You are not far off of that.
But combined, that's over $120 million a year.
The costs are high.
If I quit asking you questions, I believe we can go. I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further commissioner questions? Commissioner C. Williams.
Thank you, Chair Powers. Good afternoon. I won't
afternoon.
keep you too long because I'm eager to know what we can know and move on. If DEP had provided a definition for what the system benefits were, would that have made a difference to ORS's recommendation? And yeah, I'll just stop there.
No.
Okay. Is that kind of information typical in what you would have expected?
No.
And why is that?
Because it is not the financing program is not an energy efficiency DSM program. So we did not expect to see system benefits or proposed energy savings. I mean, certainly the company has designed the program to achieve energy savings for those customers who voluntarily participate, but the rationale for why non-participating customers should fund some of these expenses and how the company has related it to larger system benefits, that's the justification that they have offered. We have said that justification is not to ORS is not satisfactory because the system benefits are speculative. They belong in the EEDSM bucket. And I think when we're looking at this TOB pilot, we need to look at it in terms of what does the financing program do? Who will avail themselves of the financing program? and who will not, and how should those costs under cost causation principles be assigned?
As I listen to everybody associated with this particular application in this program, I think about what you all must have talked about in the process and what you asked for, and this is a tiny part of the difference, but did you all consider in looking at warranty and maintenance that the company's testimony, I believe, had, include some standards. They weren't spelled out for us, but if those standards were identified and provided to the customer, is that not a step in the right direction with that particular issue, where it's clear what the customer would need to be looking for? The company is clear what their standard is, and you all talked about a 30-day kind of response to be able to provide it to show proof that you've met. I'm suggesting some standards that might have helped that circumstance. Does that make any sense?
It does. And I think if I heard Witness Stuff correctly earlier today, I heard him be open to considering some of that, and we are encouraged by that. We just want the customer to have those choices available to them and not just have kind of this one track to participation, because in the example given in my direct testimony exhibit DMH1, you can see for just an HVAC system, and I know it's different, and there was conversation about some of the other measures might not be so onerous in the maintenance and warranty. It's $3,500 for the customer. And even though the interest rate or the fixed fee is not of 8.5% isn't tacked on to the top of that, it still is a chunk of money. And it is empowering to customers to know that they can look and see, if they choose, if there's something that's more economic for them or easier to use. And so we want the customer to have that opportunity. It's not that we're against a maintenance and warranty plan offered by the company. We want the customer to have that choice. We also want it separated from the meter conservation charge, because the meter conservation charge is specific to the installation and the other costs related to the proposed program, and the maintenance and warranty services should be separated so the customer knows what they're paying for.
But that wouldn't change what the savings, the calculation for the 10% minimum savings potential, correct?
I don't think I could answer that, because I don't know what if the customer went into the market for their own maintenance and warranty services meeting the company's standards, if you will, which is a great term. I don't know if that changes the construct of the 10% savings realization. It is very possible that those savings could go up as a result of finding those and paying for them separately. Just depends on how the customer's looking at it.
I'm not sure how to respond to that, and I'm glad I don't have to, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Any further commissioner questions? Any redirect?
No redirect.
Thank you very much. Is there anything further from any party? All right. So what about proposed orders? 2 weeks? Okay. We're looking at possible proposed orders within 2 weeks. Does that work? Okay.
I guess my only question, sir, would be when the transcript might be available.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
My only concern would be when the transcript is going to be available.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Ms. Wessinger Hill will meet with y'all and explain it.
Okay, thank you.
Being nothing further, thank you all for your participation and your patience with your new chairman, and have a good day.